can't wait to see this. Aren't packages hard to open sometimes? Here it is. My brand new stamp. Now I can stamp my new name on all the important letters I write, like this one. See, this is my old Harbourmaster stamp. It's kind of small, don't you? So, I have decided to be called Supervisor of Ships, Salvage, and Seagoing. Sounds so much bigger. That's what this stamp says. Oh, my goodness. It's going to cover up the whole letter. But I have to mail my letters. I bet Hank would know what to do. You see, one time, Hank wanted a big new name. Let me tell you all about it. The biggest barge the Tugs had ever seen was coming to live in the Big Harbour. Theodore, George, and Hank were given the job of bringing him to his new dock. Let's race! He was very excited to see the new barge. The Tugs set off for Bedford Buoy. Can't catch me, hollered Hank. Can so, called Theodore. Here I come, roared George. Well, of course, Hank won. Hank, huffed Theodore all out of breath. You're the fastest tug in the whole harbor. Look, said George. There he is. Theodore and Hank turned to look. And there was the new barge. He's really big, boomed George. He even has a big name, said Theodore. Shelburne. That's the biggest name I've ever heard, said Hank. Hank couldn't wait to be one of the first tugs in the Big Harbour to move the new barge. Hello, George called to the barge. I'm George, and this is Theodore. Well, don't forget me, said Hank. I'm Hank. Hello there, tugboats, replied Shelburne in a very slow voice. My name is Shelburne the Sea Barge. That's a really big name, said Hank. Does anyone ever call you Shelley for short? Certainly not, snorted Shelburne. My name is Shelburne the Sea Barge. Well, to Hank's surprise, Shelburne began moving. George and Theodore had tied their tow ropes onto Shelburne, and they were starting without him. Hey, called Hank. Wait for me. But George was brooming his engine, and no one could hear Hank. The tugs puffed off with Shelburne, leaving Hank in a cloud of smoke. Everyone always forgets about me, Hank said to himself. That night at the Great Ocean Dock, all the tugs were talking about Shelburne the Sea Barge. He's really very nice, said Emily. He seems to be a very safe barge, said Fodoc thoughtfully. He even has his own lifeboat. I like him because he's big, blared George. Theodore squeezed closer into the excited circle of tugs. Even his name is big. Shelburne the Sea Barge. A big name, Hank said to himself. Big name. The next morning at the work meeting, the dispatcher gave out the jobs for the day to the other tugs. Now, said the dispatcher, looking around, who else do we have? Oh, yes, I almost forgot. Hank. But Hank didn't toot his whistle. Hank? The dispatcher repeated. I don't want to be called Hank anymore, replied Hank. You don't? Said the dispatcher. No. No one calls Theodore Teddy, Hank continued. Well, no. No, they don't, said the dispatcher. From now on, concluded Hank, I want to be called Henry. Well, all the tugs turned to Hank, and then back to the dispatcher. The dispatcher was very quiet for a moment, and then he said, Very well, Henry. Well, that day, throughout the Big Harbor, it seemed that everyone was talking about Hank's new name. You know, frowned George, Henry is a bigger sounding name than George. I think I should be called Goliath. I've always wanted to be called by my middle name, declared Emily. Annapolis. Fodak floated past on his regular safety inspection patrol. Hello there, called Philip the ferry twin. Fodak, called Fillmore, the other ferry twin. I'm not Fodak anymore, called Fodak. Now, my new name is Frederick. Theodore, said Hank. What's your new name? Oh, I don't know, replied Theodore. I still like Theodore. Well, the next morning at the work meeting, the dispatcher was very confused about all the new names. He looked at Fodak. Goliath, he began. I'm Frederick, said Fodak. He's Goliath. Frederick is a bigger name than Goliath, George grumbled. Continued the dispatcher, looking at Emily. Emily, you take Barrington. I'm Annapolis, explained Emily. And Barrington's name is Bartholomew, said Hank. Yes, said the dispatcher. I would like you, Goliath, to take Shelburne. I have now decided to be called Gargantua, announced George. Now, that was a really big name. Hank, Henry, Emily. The dispatcher was starting to get dizzy trying to remember all the new names. Annapolis, he sputtered, and Frederick. Goliath, Gargantua, Galapagos, no, Gargling, oh, goodness. Everyone just go and do everything. When at last the tugs were gone, the dispatcher turned to Donald Dock. Donald, he groaned, why is everyone suddenly changing names? Donald didn't say anything. Donald? Groaned the dispatcher. Not you, too. Oh, said Donald. When the tugs arrived at the jobs, they were in for a big surprise. The dispatcher had gotten so dizzy trying to remember all the new names, he had sent George, Emily, and Hank all to move Barrington Barge. And only Theodore to move Shelburne the sea barge. Theodore stared at the giant barge. Am I supposed to move Shelburne all by myself? He wondered. Theodore tried to push Shelburne, but the barge barely budged. Theodore backed up and gave his mightiest shove. Shelburne started moving all right into the harbor. Whoa, called Theodore. Wait for me! Meanwhile, George, Emily, and Hank were trying to squeeze themselves around Barrington so they could pull him. But there wasn't much room. Emily! George. Push over! My name is Annapolis, replied Emily. You push over, George. It's Gargantua, huffed George. Barrington, hold still. I'm Bartholomew, said Barrington. This is silly, said Emily finally. Everyone just use their regular names. Hey, look, said Barrington. There goes Shelburne, all by himself. Sure enough, the jumbo barge was drifting into the middle of the harbor, faster and faster. Theodore came racing by. I can't catch Shelburne, he shouted. He's going too fast. Who can catch him? Said Emily. Everyone turned to Hank. Hank, commanded George. Catch him! You're the fastest tug in the harbor. Yes, agreed Emily. You're fast, Hank. But Hank floated as still as a sea cucumber. The tugs could see that Shelburne was drifting toward the far shore. Soon, he would bump right into it. Hank! Hank! Everyone him. Theodore turned straight towards Hank. Henry, he said, you've got to catch Shelburne. Well, Hank turned toward the runaway barge. He fired his engine, and then he began to race just as fast as he could. Hank was fast, and soon he caught Shelburne. Now came the hard part. He lashed the tow rope onto the barge, just like a horse, and began to pull with all his might. It worked. Hank stopped Shelburne, and just in time. The tugs all tooted their whistles and shouted, "Hooray! Hooray for Henry!" "Well, that was exciting," said Shelburne. "That was great, Henry," said Theodore, rushing up to his friend. Hank did feel great. It felt good being needed by everyone. But then he was silent for a moment. "Theodore," he said at last, "how come you didn't get a new name?" "Oh," replied Theodore, I guess I just kind of feel like a Theodore." Well, Hank didn't say anything after that, but he was thinking. The next morning at the work meeting, the dispatcher gave out the jobs for the new day. "Now, Henry," he said, "today I would like you to move Barrington Barge." Hank cleared his throat. "I've decided to have another new name," he announced. "Another name?" said the dispatcher, already feeling dizzy. "Yes," continued Hank. "I've decided to be called Hank." "You have?" said the dispatcher. "Yes," concluded Hank. "Hank is who I am, and Hank is who I want to be." "You are?" said the dispatcher. "I mean, of course you are." And with a hearty toot-toot, Hank set off for work. "I'm really glad you're Hank again, Theodore." "Me too, Theodore," smiled Hank. "Me too." Between you and me, I'm glad that Hank decided to be Hank again. I really like his name. And maybe, just maybe, I don't need to be called a supervisor of ships, salvage, and seagoing. After all, I mean, the Harbourmaster's who I am, and the Harbourmaster's who I want to be. Let's try this old Harbourmaster stamp. Look at that. That's wonderful.